Hi everyone, this is Robert and welcome to IDG Live. This is my first live stream of 2026, so Happy New Year. If you celebrated, a very happy Christmas to you as well. I hope you had a fantastic break. As I always do at this time of year, I took a good 2 weeks off. Thank you for your well wishes. I know a lot of people have said I hope I had a good break. I did. I had a lovely time, so thank you very much indeed. Today we are going to do an open Q&A. I thought we'll just sort of start with any burning questions you had over the last while. I've obviously got lots of plans for the new year, things I'm hoping to be doing with the channel, with providing content. We've got a lot to look forward to this year. We've got Night of the Seven Kingdoms coming up. In less than 2 weeks, actually, and season 3 of House of the Dragon, Rings of Power, should be later in the year. Witcher season 5 should be happening. So there's a lot going on this year, even in the cinema. Then we've got, I'm really looking forward to the Odyssey, which is going to be coming out, and something else I was going to look forward to. It'll come back to me. Anyway, I'm excited about the year. I hope you are too. There's a lot to look forward to. So this is an open Q&A. That means I'm going to be dotting about all over the place. Mostly A Song of Ice and Fire to start with. I've got some Lord of the Rings questions coming up a bit later as well. Why don't we start though with Actually, it's a Lord of the Rings question. Phantom Earth, thank you very much. Sent through a super chat, first super chat of the new year. So thank you very much. Saying, from the music of creation to a bath song with Tom Bombadil, have you or would you ever do a video of the music and songs of Tolkien's Legendarium? Well, I haven't specifically, no. Would I? Yes. I think it's quite a big topic, quite broad. One of the things, I'll probably sort of reveal my plans for the year through this live stream. One of the things I'm hoping to do is a proper history of Middle-earth, just going through from creation all the way through to the Fourth Age and beyond. I've got a few videos, sort of history videos, sort of dotted about, but I just want to join it all up so that we've got things set out as a whole. And the very start, creation, is through a song. And this is actually kind of mirrored with C.S. Lewis, obviously Tolkien's great friend, where Narnia starts with a song as well. And then it permeates through everything. It really does. And I think the thing that, if you go back and read the books, having not read them for a while, the thing that always gets me is that I go, oh, there's so much more poetry, so many more songs than I remember. It's like they stop every now and then and someone sings a song. Um, it is such a huge part of that world. So yes, I will definitely be doing something about creation and about song there. Maybe I will do a bespoke video as well. So thank you for that. Let's start the new year also by just saying thank you to my moderators. Moderators, I see Andrew K, Stephanie Frederick are agree Weirwood already there in the chat. Thank you. I hope you had a fantastic break as well. And now we're back. But if you are watching this live over on IDG Live, then the reason why the chat is such a positive, uplifting place is because of the moderators. They do an amazing job. So moderators, thank you so much. If you are there in the chat, could you just give them a little bit of love? That would be very much appreciated from me. So let's go into some questions. James Horner. Hello, Robert. I hope you had a good Christmas and New Year. I did. Thank you. Do you think that it is possible that the religion of the drowned god could be the original religion of the first men? When you look at the story of how Storm's End was founded, there is a sea god and a wind goddess. I know it doesn't match perfectly, but the Iron Men have lived on the Iron Islands for thousands of years. Do you think the religion could have changed over time to match the harsh life of the Iron Men, or is it just a coincidence? The first men must have had some religion before they started worshipping the old gods, and the first Iron Men were most likely descended from the first men. So, yeah, love this question as a starting point. So we're going back into the history of the world of Ice and Fire. And the first men come across, there was the land bridge from Essos. They come across the land bridge into Westeros, and they sort of start pushing their way through the continent, basically. Then we get the Hammer of the Waters by the Children of the Forest, trying to defend their territory. And then at some point, we get the Pact. That we will get more information about this from George Martin at some point, I am sure. But at some point, we get the Pact, which is an end of hostilities between the First Men and the Children of the Forest. And there's a division of land, there's a cessation of hostilities, but also a really intriguing, just sort of sidebar, which is that the humanity, the First Men, took on worshipping the old gods. That then became their religion. I say this is a really interesting little oddity sidebar because the Children of the Forest were losing, and the distribution of land shows that they didn't get much. They weren't in the strong position here, and yet the First Men decided to change their religion to worship the old gods, which is an astonishing sort of turn and makes you wonder what happened. Something must have happened to make them realize, wow, these old gods, they're powerful. So we need to be on their side. Even though we're winning this war, we need to be on their side. So that happened. The Iron Men, the Iron Islanders, they've got their own legends of where they got their religion from. But I and many others do wonder, do speculate that perhaps they used to be First Men. The Maesters wondered this. There are quite a few hints that they're very similar cultures in a way. The climate in the north is obviously harsh. The climate on the Iron Islands is harsh, and it does kind of feel like they might have come from the same place, which does obviously make sense because the Iron Islanders um, may once have been the First Men, have come in, populate the Iron Islands, and then when the mainland First Men changed their religion, the Iron Islanders didn't. Which is kind of the point you're suggesting here, is that perhaps this religion which has morphed in the Iron Islands into the drowned god, perhaps that was the early religion of the First Men, because we don't know what their religion was. It makes sense to me that it's not that we're saying the First Men used to worship the ground god. We're saying that they both came from the same original religion, and that we see echoes of that with some of the other sea-based religions that are there, like the legends of the creation of Storm's End, like this idea of the Merling King and so on. So there is this kind of around the periphery of Westeros, there is this kind of idea of sea-based gods, which again does kind of make sense. Story kind of checks out. If you want another complete sidebar, there's not huge amounts of evidence for it, but if you look on the map and you say, okay, so the Hammer of the Waters, whatever this was, the Hammer of the Waters, we're told that it destroyed the land bridge between Westeros and Essos, leaving the Stepstone. So just there was a huge bit of land, and now it's just lots of little islands. We also, in one version of this at least, are told that this was cast from the neck, from Moat Cailin. And the implication might be that this also is what makes the neck so watery. Perhaps they were. It's it's possible that having tried to stop humanity by severing the land bridge between Westeros and Essos, they also tried to stop them getting to the north by cutting off the north from the south at the neck. And perhaps if you look at the map, if you sort of just head the Iron Islands aren't actually that far away from the mainland, from that part from the neck. So if a Hammer of the Waters tried and nearly succeeded in severing the north from the rest of Westeros, perhaps that also cut off the Iron Islands. There's a little bit of possible evidence. If you go to Old Wick, Naga's ribs, as they're described, they say, oh, these were the ribs of Sea Dragon. However, they do seem to be a little bit like old dead weirwoods. And if the weirwoods on the Iron Islands had been severed from the rest of the weirwood network, that would have killed them. So I like this idea. I think it's the kind of thing we probably won't know for certain, but it kind of, a version of it at least, does kind of work for me. Jonathan's saying, finally finished the books. That makes me so happy. I never would have read them if not for your channel. Did you see Avatar? The tree reminded me of Weirwoods. Also enjoying Duncan Egg. Well, lots of things there. First of all, you finished the books. I'm very happy and excited. This is one of the things that brings me the greatest joy when people say, because of this, I've been reading the books and I'm loving them. So that I'm so glad. Avatar. No, I have to admit, it's one of those things. The Avatar movies that I watched the first one. I liked it, but I wasn't blown away. And I haven't seen either of the other two Avatar films. So that's kind of like a world that has escaped me. I've never really engaged in that one. So yeah, I don't know about that. The tree that's in there. Enjoying Duncan Egg, good. I'm really pleased. Duncan Egg is wonderful, great set of stories. Obviously, we've got I think 2 weeks. Was it 1 week today? Maybe. Yes, not long now until we get United Seven Kingdoms. At which point, actually, let me just say thank you for that. I said I would kind of drip little nuggets of. Can one drip nuggets? Perhaps not. Of what I'm planning for this year throughout the live stream. So, with Duncan Egg, you will find, or United Seven Kingdoms, you will find over on the main channel, I will be doing a lot of videos which are kind of related to it. I've already put out what is a hedge knight, for example. I've been doing one on how tourneys work. That will come out soon, and then quite a few others that are sort of adjacent to what we're seeing there. As for the episodes themselves, what I thought I might try doing was they come out on Thursday night, Friday morning, depending on which part of the world you are in, which means that these live streams will be before the episode airs. So very happy to sort of answer any questions in live streams. But I thought I might let patrons get a chance to ask any questions they've got, and they'll do a quick pre-record working through the questions that patrons have got, then upload that video. I don't know when I'll be able to get to it, Saturday or Sunday or something like that. So patrons, keep an eye out for that. What I will do is I will, after the episode airs, I'll just put a post over on Patreon and say, any questions, let me know, and then I will just go through them. So that's my plan. I hope you like it. Let me know. Let's go to a question from Johnny Seriani saying, not sure if this is tinfoil or just a headcanon. Littlefinger will meet his downfall in a reverse parallel to Ned, being out of his league when he travels north, specifically due to his breaking of the rules of the gods. He will become a kinslayer after he disposes of Sweet Robin, who is actually his own son, and thus will offend the gods, ultimately spelling his undoing, similar to the phrase being accursed for the breaking of guest right. I doubt any of this would be explicitly stated but I imagine events playing out in a way that makes this a possibility. Yes, good thinking. I like it. The um the question of whether Sweet Robin is actually Littlefinger's son, I did a whole video on that if you want to go and check out on the main YouTube channel. Uh, but I always spoil my videos. My take is we don't know for 100%, but probably not. Is where I came to on that. Just going through when they were together and whether it was therefore possible. So I think probably that's not his son. The main the headline here, I 100% would agree with, though, that what we're going to see is Littlefinger goes to the north, and when he gets to the north, he will find himself in the same way that Ned was just completely out of his depth in King's Landing. It wasn't his environment. He didn't really know how to work and operate there. He was a northerner. In the north, people respected him. Things worked. In the south, he didn't get it. It's going to be the same for Littlefinger. In the south, his Machiavellian tendencies work perfectly. In the north, no, it's not going to work for him. So I absolutely, and that will lead to his death. I absolutely see that as a kind of a mirror image of what happened with Ned. So is this going to be shown as a kind of a judgment of the gods? I don't think it will be played out that way. I think it's going to be played out more as a kind of like the North remembers. And Sansa, this is going to be a huge part of her journey because she knows what happened. She is slowly learning how to play the Game of Thrones, and she will get to the point where she's suddenly feeling she's back in Winterfell and she's feeling safe, and that's the moment that she can break from Littlefinger's control. And if she tells the Starks, if she tells the Northerners, you know what, this is the guy who betrayed Ned Stark, that's the moment that it's going to be over for him. James Perkins, I have a timeline question, which could be nothing or could be something. We have it from Bloodraven that the children of the forest carve faces into the weirwood trees in order to awaken them, and that those eyes are the first that a young green seer learns to use. This makes it sound like the carving of the faces into the weirwood trees is critical to the general utility of the weirwood green seer mechanic, and would be a practice in long use. However, when the first men and the children of the forest swear the pact on the Isle of Faces, it is said that they carved faces into all of the trees in order to bear witness to the agreement. Does this mean that the carving of faces is only a post-pact innovation? Or is it more of a symbolic thing, where not all weirwoods get faces except on the Isle of Faces? A really interesting question. So, we know weirwoods nowadays, they get faces carved into them. And yes, both of the things you say are absolutely true. Bloodraven does tell Bran that it is through the eyes that the Green Seers first learn to see, and that is how the Weirwood Tree is awakened. And it's also true that at the Pact, we're told that, which took place on the Isle of Faces, it only became the Isle of Faces because they carved the faces onto it in order to witness that pact. So, where does this all, how does this all fit together? I think it makes sense to me that they understood this concept that if you have carved a carved face, carved eyes, then that is easier for green seers to see out. If it's the first thing that a new green seer can look out of, then that implies that this is the bar is lower for green seers to be able to see out through those. Now, that understanding was probably there before, in my logic anyway, because otherwise it was just a symbolic thing that they carve the face, carve the eyes, just to look, it looks like the trees are watching us, kind of thing. Um, Actually, if you have got a pact which you think this is a really important moment, this is very important that everybody, future generations, needs to be able to witness what's going on here. Then you carve the eyes in to allow future greenseers to be able to see and witness what is going on. So, just as a by the by, this probably means that Bran is going to be able to. He doesn't actually have to go to the Isle of Faces. He can see through one of those trees and witness the pact. But why did they feel the need to do that? If a greenseer, when they get sort of more experienced and more powerful, if they don't need those eyes, they can travel beyond the weirwood trees, which is what Bloodraven also says. Why did they do that carving? Well, because they've just been losing in a big war. The number of children of the forest has come down hugely. The number of greenseers will have come down hugely. They will actually be starting to worry about do we have enough greenseers? Um, how do we do this? Let's make sure that everybody, every future generation can do this, even if it's harder. There aren't as many greenseers. Even entry level greenseers can see out through these eyes. So that is the way I kind of interpret this: is that it's not. Um, it was the the mechanism was understood before. The carving of the faces was done, yes, symbolically, but also to try and make sure that every future generation would be able to witness it. Let's have a quick flick through the chat. Um, I love it when I go to the chat, and it seems in the chat you've clearly been talking about something, and I've only just coming into it, and so some people call me Morris is just saying pie and parsnips. It is then. I have no idea where you got that, but that's good. Uh, I just have a quick flick through. Yeah, pie and parsnips. I don't quite understand it anyway. Um, Blackberry saying, I always expected the magic of the story to ruin Littlefinger eventually, as his whole plan relies on a materialist human world. Yeah, I would agree with that absolutely. So, Bran coming back, Bran will also be able to sort of see into what has been happening. Buttoned up reader saying it looked really good. Duncan Egg just wish the episodes were a little longer out of sheer greed. Yeah, I know the feeling. You know the feeling. It's so for those who don't know, so this is going to be 6 episodes, and the episodes, I think they've released the runtimes now. The episodes are all at least half an hour long. The longest is 40 something minutes, I think. Um, uh, which was, I think, the penultimate one, which is probably the one with the trial by 7, and um, I think I'm okay with it. It's the sort of the short answer is that I thought about this as we knew this show was going to be happening. It's like it's not a long story. If you've read it, it's not a long story. It's a novella, so it doesn't need a full season, 10 episodes of 50 minutes, an hour, whatever. It doesn't need that to tell the whole story. Um, so I think something around 3.5 hours does feel about right. So yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. I think if they were to add in more or have longer episodes, it would be adding in material that's not in the story, which could be nice and could be fun. But I'm quite happy for it to be quite a tight 6 episodes, and just get them to stick to the story. So George R. Martin seems happy with it. So let's trust this one. AD Ross, Happy New Year, Sir Robert. Thank you. My question is about Tywin Lannister and his historical predecessors. One of the main reasons House of the Dragon and Fire and Blood revitalized my Song of Ice and Fire fandom was seeing Westeros at a different time with familiar but different dynamics. For example, the Hightowers and Velaryons being such prominent families, and the Lannisters being relatively inconsequential by comparison, and the way in which Otto Hightower occupies a similar position in the narrative to Tywin in A Song of Ice and Fire, with some notable differences. Are there any other examples of preeminent and fearsome lords who had outsized impacts on the political landscape of the Seven Kingdoms in their day, and any from surprising houses? I could think of Rhaegar Baratheon, but might there be other good examples? Yes, so Rhaegar Baratheon, absolutely. I mean, I would throw Bloodraven in there, who obviously does come from the Targaryen family, but also he's backward. So he, for about a quarter of a century, basically ran the Seven Kingdoms. Others that you could go around the time of the Dance of the Dragons, there are a lot of unexpected characters who just suddenly get to be incredibly important. Unwin Peake in the Regency afterwards, he wasn't in charge for very long, but when he was, he had this incredibly outsized influence. Cregan Stark, similarly, the Hour of the Wolf. There was a time when he ran the Seven Kingdoms, basically. So, and it wasn't for long. It was the Hour of the Wolf. And it is surprising because the Starks haven't generally got involved in this kind of business down in King's Landing. This was just very much a one-off that came down, dealt with stuff, and went back up north again. So yeah, there's a few different examples where you get strong individuals who, for short periods of time, were very powerful. There are a few not lords that you could probably throw in there. Monken, Grand Maester Monken is one. Septon Bath is another. But if you're looking at effectively long-serving hands of the king, it's quite a small number actually. And yes, you've got Otto Hightower, who is quite similar in kind of feel to Tywin, it has to be said. But then probably Bloodraven's the next closest approximation. Let's go to Lorelei Dragon saying, good evening, Robert, and to you. I have a more opinion/speculation type question. Why does Bran have to go to Bloodraven at all? Couldn't they communicate through dreams or any weirwood tree in the network? If Bran is so integral to the weirwood network strategy for fighting the others, wouldn't he have been safer going south to the Isle of Faces or to Howland Reed in the Neck? Selfishly, I hope that Bran does go to the Isle of Faces at some point so we can see it directly. Well, I would agree. I would love to see the Isle of Faces. I think the first thing to say is that when Bran got chosen, as it were, the Weirwood Network Bloodraven didn't know specifically who this was. Or at least they didn't communicate that through to Jojen. Jojen was the vessel sent to go and collect Bran, but he wasn't told, you have to go get Bran, bring him north. He was told through his green dreams to find the winged wolf who was chained. And he decided that it was Bran. So the interactions that Bran has with the Weirwood Network more broadly, they're not close. He's not being taught anything. He's just been told to come. And the reason why is that when he gets up to Bloodraven, they awaken his third eye, as it were, or his ability to see through the Weirwood Network by giving him the Weirwood paste. So this is the magical awakening of his abilities. And Could they have done that down in the God's Eye Lake on the Isle of Faces? I suppose they could have done. But I think you have to ask the question, where was it safest? Yes, there were some issues that Bran and co faced just outside Bloodraven's cave. Yes, they had a couple of close encounters on their way north, but broadly speaking, it was actually not that hazardous a journey. Compare that to what would have happened if the Starks were heading south during that time, going through the north while the Boltons were rebelling against them, having to go past Moat Cailin, perhaps, which was being held by the Ironborn and then by the Boltons, then having to get all the way through the Riverlands, which were at a state of war. Actually, it sounds counterintuitive, but going north was it was a safer journey for Bran. So yes, he could have been sent south, but it's a long way, even longer. I think if you look on the map, it's probably even longer than going north to Bloodraven's cave, and going north was probably safer. So. No, I don't think he had to go to Bloodraven. Others could have trained him. Bloodraven does train him in warging. He's training him in how to use the Weirwood network. Perhaps others could do that as well. But why would you send him to a second best place if the best place is closer and probably safer to get to? Flame G saying, "Hello, Robert, and Happy New Year, and to you. My question is, if Ned Stark could or wanted to choose a trial by combat, who do you think would have been his champion?" It's an interesting question. So let's assume he's been accused of these things. The plan to get him to confess and then get sent up to the wall, that hasn't happened. But he can have a trial by combat. Who would he have? Well, his instinct, he's a Northerner. He's Ned Stark. His instinct would have been to fight for himself. But we do have to recognize, I think, the fact that this isn't. So, trial by combat is a Fate of the Seven thing. It's not a Laws of the Old Gods thing. So, this isn't what Ned would specifically choose. But if we assume that he is going down that route for whatever reason, his instinct would be to do it himself. He, of course, had been injured, so maybe he wouldn't be able to do it. Who would he choose? The problem, obviously, is that all of his natural allies, Jory Cassell or anything like that, they're all dead. So he hasn't got anyone there who he can call on. He could try and ask for somebody to come from the north to be representing him. But realistically, would the Lannisters, would Cersei allow that person free and fair access? Would they allow the trial to wait that long while a message got through and somebody came down? It doesn't seem likely. So you then have to ask, who in King's Landing would Ned most trust? And I think only one name really kind of stands out, which is Barristan Selmy. They got on okay, those two. It's clear that Barristan kind of respects Ned. He sees this as a heathen northerner. There's a lot that he probably doesn't like, but he sees a man of honor, and he can see the character of Ned Stark. We don't get many interactions between them, but when we do, we see that there's a healthy level of respect there. And Ned, I think, would trust Barristan to be fairly representing him. Right, let's go to a question from Caleb Weir saying, "Hello, Robert. Happy New Year, and to you. I was wondering what is going on with Mance Raider at Winterfell. What is his plan, and what do you see in his future?" Well, I am in the middle of writing a video on this very topic. As part of, I'm doing a sort of a loose-ish series about the Great Northern Conspiracy, what's going on, and yeah, it is. It feels like a bit of a mystery because we obviously don't have his own POV, so we only ever see him through other people's perspectives. Primarily, John, Melisandre for a chapter, and then Theon when he's actually in Winterfell. And Theon doesn't know who he is or any of the background to this, so we're only kind of like seeing one element of this. So, what is he doing there? So, the background, just to get you back up to speed. So, having been brought through south of the wall, he's captured by Stannis. Stannis decides he has to die. If he's not going to bend the knee, he has to die. John just sort of like tries to put in a word and sort of says, the laws of men end here at the wall. You don't have to. But he's burned. And John orders him shot to kind of save him or save him from being burned to death. After which we discover that wasn't actually him. Melisandre has saved Mance with the full knowledge of Stannis. After he'd heard John's argument that the laws of men end at the wall, she has sort of done a swap, and the Lord of Bones is the person who died, Rattleshirt. And Mance lives on, but now glamoured as the Lord of Bones. We're left to be kind of like a little bit uncertain about what's going on here, but we get the Melisandre chapter when we do learn a little bit more, and it becomes very apparent. She's there. She's saying we have to get the trust of Jon Snow. We have to get him on side somehow. And why? Because Stannis hasn't got a huge army. Because Stannis needs a Stark to rally the Northerners behind. And he actually has a little bit of a grudging respect for Jon. You can see it when it sort of comes out in those few chapters when they're both together there at the wall. He sees Jon's leadership and he sees his integrity, and he's never going to be friends with him, but he kind of respects him in the same way that he respected Ned Stark. He sees somebody who is doing their duty and keeping on going, even when there's opposition. So Stannis heads off. Melisandre stays there at the wall with Jon and with Mance, and she sees in her flames, she sees this this girl on a dying horse trying to get to Castle Black, and she decides this must be Arya, who has gone missing. And she decides it is Jon. It's not 100% certain, but she says, well, we'll send someone out to go and find her and bring her back. Her thinking is very clear. If I can get Arya, then he will trust us a bit more. He will be more on our side. He will feel that maybe he owes us a little bit. And she reveals to Jon, actually, this is Mance Raider. I'm going to send him out. And Jon says, well, why should I trust him? And she says, because he owes you his life. Because you were the person who managed to persuade Stannis that he shouldn't be killed. And added to which, we've got his child. There's a whole baby swap thing there, but that's another issue. So he sends Mance with some spearwives who know who he is off to find this girl on a dying horse. Now, that's not Arya. That's Alice Karstark, who does make her way up to Winterfell, not Winterfell, to Castle Black. She's also trying to escape a forced marriage, and it doesn't appear that Mance found her. She makes her way there of her own volition. But Mance clearly carries on. At some point, he hears that Arya is at Winterfell and is going to be married to Ramsay Bolton. So he pitches up at Winterfell with his 6 spearwives, and he's taking up the pseudonym Abel the Bard, and his spearwives. He says that they're washerwomen, camp followers is this kind of the implication that's there for others to sort of draw. They get welcomed in. It's going to be a very long, cold winter, and a bard will help with morale, as will camp followers. So they are allowed in. And then we get several chapters from Theon's perspective of what they're up to. Now, I do always spoil my videos, but the headline is the main thing they are doing is trying to get the person they think is Arya, but is actually Jane Poole, out and get her away from Winterfell to Stannis' forces so that he can then deliver her up to Jon Snow. And we see this in many different ways. But they focus, so the Spearwives start to focus their attention in on Theon. They're asking him questions about how did you manage to secretly get into Winterfell? Implication being, is there a way to secretly get out of Winterfell? And they're noticing the fact that he is one of the few people who's actually allowed access to fake Arya. He is allowed in there on Ramsay's orders, and so if they want a way in, he's the way in. And so we see over those chapters, that is the main thing that they're trying to do. And we see that at the end with Theon's chapters, where they decide now's the moment. Stannis' forces are coming. This is soon going to become a sort of a castle at war. We need to hurry the plan along. They manage to get fake Arya out, and Theon jumps off into the snowdrift with her. So that's their main focus. There's a couple of other things to note, though. I did a video on the pink letter in which I've suggested that that was sent by Mance as well. Again, a part of the plan to get Jon to come and help out. Because whatever else was going on with the pink letter, it was aimed at provoking Jon and making him want to come down to not King's Landing, to Winterfell. So that's probably the second thing they were doing. The third thing is trying to find out how to get access to the crypts. At which point we have this, well, yes, there's an obvious way. This is where Mance is going to hide out. Abel the Bard already gives the hint. Abel the Bard is an anagram of Bael the Bard, who there's a whole other story and legend there, but he hid out in the Winterfell crypts. So the foreshadowing is there. He tries to find out how to get access to them. That's where he's going to be hiding. But the question is there another level here? He's going along and doing all of this because he has to, because Melisandre is basically holding his child to ransom. But is he going to try and achieve anything else while he's there? And that's the bit that I haven't quite finished writing, so maybe there will be more. But it's possible that he has at the back of his mind, you'll remember he was trying desperately to get all of the wildlings south of the wall, and the way he wanted to do that is by finding the Horn of Winter. Is he going to be, and he was looking in tombs, that was the place he was going. He must have read this somewhere. He must have heard this, that it is there with the dead somewhere. Is that part of why he is trying to get to Winterfell Crypts? That's the uncertainty. We actually don't see much of him personally. We see a lot of his spearwives, but not so much of him personally. So what he's up to, we know some of it, but the rest of it is speculative. Buttoned Up Reader, is the Weirwood Network and Bloodraven or Bran a way for the children to reassert their control? They oppose the others, but the network doesn't seem benign. Well, yes, in a way. I think they recognize the existential crisis of the others returning, and I think that's the first thing that's there. Then the question is, what will they do on the other side of that? I think it's probably a reasonable way of interpreting the Weirwood Network as being this is an expression of Westeros. And so after the threats have been dealt with, what do they do now? They know that humanity will probably want to mistrust them still. They don't. They won't want to be known. I suspect they'll still want to remain secret. So, given that humanity will probably be on its knees at this point, will they use this as an opportunity to influence things in the longer term? Yes, very much so, I think. Reassert their control. I don't think they want people to know that they're there and doing stuff. I think they want to be secret about all of this. Rowan's Orcas saying Happy New Year, and to you. There's something that's been on my mind for years, says Orion's Orcas. Here's the only place I can express it. Bran being ruler at the end truly bothers me. He is committing abominations against the ones protecting and guiding him. He's even using summer to commit these abominations. But Bloodraven never corrects him. Why not? Does he think the end justifies the means? Everyone with Bran is expendable, and I don't believe for a second a direwolf named Summer is going to see any part of the true winter that's coming. Even Bran's direwolf will be used and killed while he loses his Stark identity and humanity. See him as a ruler at the end would be to see another monster on the Iron Throne. I'm clinging to a hope that this three-eyed raven will be of help to humanity during winter, make a new pact with the children of the forest, and then hook himself up to the biggest weirwood tree on the Isle of Faces and just be king of the Weirwood Network. He doesn't deserve to rule, just like Sansa doesn't. She betrayed Ned and Arya, running to Cersei with Ned's plans, and so on. Does she deserve to be Lady of Winterfell? I don't think so. But might she have a redemption arc and end up as Lady of the Vale? And then you say all of this thinking started when you realised that Robb never got a POV. He was doing impressive and important things, but no POV. He was even named King of the North, but no POV. I wondered if he was going to make it. He didn't, because he broke vows, promises, and distanced himself from Grey Wind. Do you see a pattern here? So, yes, I do. I see the pattern that you're sort of driving at there. I think the first thing I would say was this is grimdark, and this is going to be a bittersweet ending, which doesn't mean we're going to end up with the best person on the Iron Throne. We're not going to end up with everybody laughing and getting married and living happily ever after. There's going to be layers of things that we just have to accept as that, okay, humanity survived. That's the first thing. But beyond that, maybe things could be a bit better. So the idea of whether somebody deserves it, I think, isn't really crossing George R. R. Martin's mind in this. I would agree with you that Bran is going down, and we don't often talk about this, but Bran is going down a very dark path. And what about Sansa? Personally, I think Sansa's arc does bring her back up to Winterfell. That for me, that works best. Is that she starts it out at Winterfell, wanting to go down to King's Landing. Winterfell's just dreary and cold and doesn't want it. She sees the bright lights of King's Landing, and then her arc is to bring her back up to Winterfell, because actually Winterfell is where she is safe and where she belongs. So that kind of arc works for me. The idea that if the Starks become separated from their direwolves in some way, that or do bad things, that they therefore will get punished. I don't think George R. R. Martin's moral world works quite like that. In terms of the direwolf link, if you say which out of the Starks has got the closest links to their direwolves, you probably say Rickon, but most people don't think that he's going to survive for very long. Arya has she sent her direwolf away. She still has got a connection with Nymeria, but she literally did separate herself from her direwolf. So would we say that she is therefore not going to have a strong ending? I think she'll definitely survive, Arya. So I don't think that the structure works 100%. I don't think it works that if a Stark does a wrong or bad thing, then they're going to die, or they don't deserve to get to rule at the end. I think the people who will rule at the end will be the people who George R. R. Martin's story makes it seem logical that they are the people who should be ruling. And I think Sansa definitely, for me, that definitely makes sense for her to be Lady of Winterfell. Bran, I can see the case why he might rule the Seven Kingdoms at the end, but it's not going to be as simplistic as it happened on the TV show, I would say. So yes, I 100% agree with the logic there. I think George R. Martin is writing a darker story than that, though. Al had you left a couple of questions. I think I answered them in my Christmas live stream. So if I didn't, feel free to ask them again, but I think I did. Caris Ballerina in the chat. In the oldest Welsh prose text, the Mabinogion, there's a Bran the Blessed, or Blessed Crow. Since Bran the Broken was controversial, do you think George R. R. Martin might pivot to what I assume is his inspiration for the Brans and call him that? Maybe. I think one of the things about George R. R. Martin and his names is that he doesn't restrict himself to one name or even for any individual character. You can be Jaime Lannister. He's not just Kingslayer. He's also Oathbreaker, and he's a number of other different things. You can have more than one kind of nickname. So I think he can be called Bran the Broken. But might he also be called Bran the Blessed, or the Blessed Crow? Yeah, I see no reason why he can't. The Bran, I have to admit, I do quite like Bran the Broken. We've got Bran the Breaker, and it kind of works for me that he is he's a broken thing, cripples and broken things, bastards, cripples and broken things, as Tyrion would sort of say. I don't. Maybe my interpretation of the Game of Thrones season 8 was slightly different. I didn't think Bran the Broken as a title was the controversial thing. I think the idea that Tyrion turns around and says, "And who has a better story than Bran the Broken?" That I think was from my experience within the fandom, that was the bit that more people were like, "Well, lots of people have got a better story than him." So that I think was the thing. Calling if he becomes a king, him being called Bran the Broken works for me. Let's go to Sir Friend saying, "Happy New Year. Other than whatever happens on the others' march south, what huge battles do you see George going for with their Dream of Spring? I find it hard to believe George has spent so long highlighting how big the various armies are, not to have some kind of epic battle in there somewhere. That being said, for all numbers on the ground, might he just go with the Field of Fire again?" And then you said best wishes, warmest festive regards, and to you. So yeah, there will be battles, a lot of battles. So we know two. You didn't ask about the Winds of Winter, but I'll start there. There are two battles that will happen. There's the Battle of Ice. There's the Battle of Fire. But this is what the fandom have kind of labelled them. We've got the Siege of Meereen happening right now. So Barristan is going to try and break the siege. We've seen that from the pre-release chapters. And we've also got the forces coming out from Winterfell to take on Stannis. So we've got a couple of different battles going on there. There will be at least a second fight for Winterfell because we're going to have the first sortie coming out with the Freys and the Mandalese to take on Stannis. Firstly, they might not even get there because the Mandalese and the Freys hate each other. The reason why they got sent out to go and take on Stannis was because they were coming to blows in Winterfell, and Roose just wanted to get them out. So there will be some kind of battle there, though. But then, even so, the Boltons are inside Winterfell and Stannis is outside Winterfell. So we will have to have a fight for Winterfell in some way, shape, or form. Added to which, I think all of this kind of the hints are that we're going to have, first of all, there's the epic sea battle, which is about to happen with Euron. Then probably an attack on Old Town. Then we get Dany, who will be arriving with a huge army, and there will be fights. It will be different to her turning up and Cersei is there because it's probably going to be Fagon who's there, but there will be people who oppose her, and I think yes, there will be a field of fire in some way. We have to see these dragons in action, and her coming across to Westeros is an echo of Aegon the Conqueror. So that's the thing that we've got there. And so I'm sure George R. R. Martin will include some echoes of that original invasion. And I do wonder whether we will get a dragon v dragon battle at some point. Dany having her 3 dragons isn't necessarily how it's going to end up. Even she thinks that she's going to have 2 men who's going to be riding the other dragon. She can only ride 1 dragon. There's 2 other dragons. Who's going to get them? Jon probably will get 1. It's possible that Dragonbinder works and Euron will get 1. And then what do we have? We have a fight between Euron and Dany, perhaps. That would be on Dragonback. That would be pretty impressive. Reflective Rambling, Happy New Year to you. Saying, or pick up a question for some people, call me Morris. Thank you. I love it when people do this, picking up questions for others. It's very kind. Who is the best bastard. I suppose it depends on what you count as best, doesn't it? I mean, Bloodraven is a pretty impressive bastard. Um, if we're comparing John and Ramsay, I think John will come out on top there. Um, the great bastards were the bastard children of Aegon the Fourth, and they were some pretty indomitable characters. So I think Shearer Seastar probably you'd have to add into that one as well. Yeah, there's a lot of impressive bastards out there. Let's agree with saying Euron as the Night King from the show. Yeah, I mean, I think he will take some bits of that. They clearly in the show they downplayed Euron, and I think he's going to be a much bigger threat in the books. And the idea that the Night King got a dragon, that is an invention by the showrunners. So the Night King as a character does not exist in the books anyway, obviously. But Dany going north of the wall, then capturing one, all of that is an invention by the showrunners. But I do quite like the idea that she's not going to have all three of the dragons, and somebody we don't want to have a dragon will get it. Ginty M saying, I've seen a lot of speculation in fandom about Sansa gaining agency by killing Littlefinger or Sweet Robin, or otherwise developing into some sort of femme fatale, scheming, murderous, embittered woman. Cersei 2.0, basically. I would hate this. It feels both redundant and fundamentally just off. Firstly, the story already has Cersei in it. And so then also Sansa calls upon the teachings of Septa Mordain when she's in a bad situation and desperately tries to survive them, saying things like "a lady's courtesy is her armor." She's always searching for the genteel, ladylike thing to say or do. The first instance we see of her manipulating someone into doing what she wants is when she saves Sir Dontos from Joffrey's cruel sense of humor. I don't think it makes sense that her only path to emancipation is in learning to be aggressive and violent. Rather, I think she'll begin to use the perception Littlefinger has of her to subtly affect his machinations in ways he misses until it's too late. That's the lesson I think she'll learn: to topple an enemy with a whisper, not a punch. Sansa's arc is from fanciful girl to shrewd and measured young woman, and no part of that requires her to become cruel. I mean, I agree. Absolutely. I don't think she needs to become cruel. I think she has learned from a lot of people. She's learned from good players of the game, from Littlefinger, from Cersei, from Tyrion. She has been learning all the way through. And I agree. I don't think she needs to be cruel. That doesn't seem to be a part of her character to be cruel. But she will become an adept player of the Game of Thrones because she's been learning all this time, and you see it when we've got these chapters in the Eyrie when she's wandering around. She's learning, she's understanding what's going on in a way that the kind of the wide-eyed, if you read the early Sansa chapters, her character has developed so much. The early in book one, the Sansa chapters, compare that to the last couple of chapters we have of her. Huge difference. So yeah, I don't think it. I don't think she will become cruel, but I think she will learn to become an effective manipulator. Okay, Corvus Corax. Good evening, Robert, Dan, and all. Typically, George writes an end of the year or New Year roundup. I'm a wee bit disappointed that we don't have that yet. Yeah, let me answer that one very quickly. Yes, he often does. This isn't a thing that he's sort of got in his diary. I must do a sort of a catch-up blog post. He's sporadic with his not a blog posts, it has to be said. But it's often in like the first 2 or 3 months of the year that he will give us a more, well, these are things I've been up to and these are things which are going forward. I like like everyone, you reach this point of the year and you're like, I just want to have a think about where we're going, what's going on. Let's think back about what has happened, think forward about what, and he does that often in a blog post. It's, as I say, it's not a thing in his diary that he has to do every year. He doesn't call it, and now it's time for my New Year's update. It's just a thing he often does. He has been quiet for a little while, it has to be said, on his Not a blog. The there are updates up there, but they're often from his minions. He calls them that. That's not just me saying that. Um, it would not surprise me if we get something from him in the next couple of weeks about Duncan. He seems to really like A Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, and that could well be the kind of thing that he sort of riffs off of. He talks about that for a little bit, and then he will sort of say, "Oh, no, I've been inspired. I shall definitely be needing to be writing more Duncan Egg stories, but first I'm going to be doing this." That might be where we get get the update from. I wish I could give you more hope on this one. Probably we will get something. It's never a just here's a complete update on absolutely everything. It's just a whatever's on his mind. But the second part of your question was you were asking about whether Harry Harding was being set up to die like his predecessor Humphrey Harding did in a tourney joust. So Harry Harding, Harry the Heir, is next in line to the Vale after Sweet Robin. And Littlefinger tells Sansa the plan he has. That I don't think we've got any reason to doubt, because it seems to be what he's doing, and it seems to work with what he likes and what he's trying to achieve. Is he will Sansa is at this moment in time, she's in disguise with dyed brown hair. She's in disguise as Littlefinger's bastard daughter, as Elaine. And so he wants to get Harry and Elaine engaged. He wants them to have a wedding. At the wedding, she is revealed as actually this isn't Elaine. This is Sansa Stark. This is the niece of your old lady here, and she marries Harry. That means, and it's Sweet Robin Littlefinger sort of rather ominously says, he's very, very sickly, very poorly. He will probably die at some point, won't he? So what you're saying is that then she then marries the heir to the Vale, and the plan is that the Vale Lords all rise up, demanding that they go and help out the Starks, help get Sansa back, the North. So that seems to be the plan, and that plan requires him to survive. Now, in the short term at least, because if she had a child with him, say, and then he died, the child would be the new ruler of the Vale, and she could be the regent. So the control can carry on there. So is he being set up to die in a joust? I think that's not in the plan. That doesn't mean that won't happen. And George R. R. Martin does sometimes just go off with he allows his muse to take him in different directions. So I think we can't rule anything out. But I personally don't see a huge story need for that. I think the biggest thing is here's another Harding, and we don't know many Hardings. And so is this Harding going to be the same as what previous Hardings are like? Which is something George R. R. Martin likes doing, echoing these things down generation to generation. But I would say not immediately. He might, but that's certainly not the plan. Sanguini saying, I hope you enjoyed Bamber. Yes, so I did. I went to a fantastic castle. Is that I've got a shrinking list of castles in my own country that I definitely want to go and see. And Bamburgh Castle in the northeast of England was one that I had never been to. And the opportunity presented itself over the Christmas holidays. So you can find, I put up a couple of pictures on Instagram, Facebook. Oh, reminds me, we're now simul streaming on Facebook. I hope I click the right buttons. I hope that we're now on Facebook. So if you find it easier to watch it over there, then do. If you are watching it over on Facebook, hello, great to have you. This is an experiment. I'll see whether people are interested in that. But that's just I found another button I could press and thought, oh, I will try that, see what happens. But anyway, pictures, yes, if you want it, and that castle was used in The Last Kingdom. If you ever watch that, and it is amazing. It's a really good castle. So yes, I am a bit of a castle geek, and that's another one crossed off the list. Anyway, sorry. Next time you're in the northeast, you should visit Housesteads on Hadrian's Wall. If you haven't, I have done. As a ranger on the wall, I've often wondered where George R. R. Martin visited when he was inspired to write a Game of Thrones. Any idea? Um, I may have known this at some point. No, I can't remember off the top of my head. I will have to have a look at it. Maybe somebody in chat will know. But yes, he saw the wall. So for those who don't, obviously, Hadrian's Wall, this wall sort of goes across the north of England. It's not actually the border between England and Scotland these days, but that was effectively, it marked the end of the Roman rule in Britain, and the wildlings, the Picts, were north, and they were kept out by this wall. And George R. R. Martin saw it and got inspiration for the wall, which you absolutely, if you've been there, it absolutely makes sense. It's not. Don't imagine like the um, Great Wall of China. It's quite nowadays. Most of the wall, Hadrian's Wall, is actually quite low. There's not much of it left, but still, this thing stretching out across country, just dividing civilization from, well, there be wildlings. The idea is very evocative. So yeah, it wouldn't surprise me if he went to Housesteads, which is one of the Roman forts, which they had them sort of dotted along the wall. Obviously, you can see the remains of that Roman fort there, which yeah, love it to bits. It's a beautiful part of the world. It has to be said up there. Um, Jay Shaw saying, but what about the other wall? Do you mean the Antonine Wall? That's even further north. Yes, so that wasn't stone, that was more earthworks. Dividing, so Joel Thompson saying dividing civilization from Scotland. It's actually nowadays I say it's not actually the border. We sort of colloquially, yes, but if you go and stand at Hadrian's Wall these days, certainly on the eastern half of it, then you can't even see Scotland. It's miles away. But it's like the principle of it. Um, Ellen's son X saying, reaching back to the direwolf connections to Starks. In summary, Bran is king of summer, Sansa is lady of Winterfell, Jon is the ghost at the wall, Arya a new Nymeria, founder of new lands. Yeah, all of that kind of that works. Let's go to a question from Adam Geets saying, hi Robert, I was thinking about Summerhall. What do you think about Aegon V making a blood sacrifice of one of his own family, possibly Rhaegar, to bring back dragons? When Dunk saw what was happening, he stopped the sacrifice and saved the mother and baby. I keep wanting to understand why George is keeping what happened at Summerhall a secret until the last possible moment. Doesn't make sense if it were just an accident or a ritual gone wrong. Well, I sort of, there's a couple of elements to this. I sort of agree with that, and I understand that. Yeah, if this is just what we're told happened, he wanted to hatch some dragon eggs. Some fire was involved. There was a big fire. Got out of hand. That was it. If that's it, then the lengths to which he has gone to protect what happened or hide what happened seem a little excessive. When I say a little excessive, if you've not seen it in the world of Ice and Fire, it's the world book basically, then he went to the extent of having a report written by the Maester of what happened, which in world someone had spilled some ink over, so they could only make out a few words here or there, and so he only told us a few random words, which doesn't reveal much at all. Um, so yeah, it's so obvious he's not even pretending or hiding. It's just no, I'm not telling you this. Now, if that is just the experiment went wrong, that does seem a little excessive. But it could be an experiment went wrong, but with extra layers. It could be an experiment went wrong, but he just doesn't want us to know the exact way that Dunk and Egg die. He died. Dunk died a hero's death, it would appear. One of the bits, the fragments that we have, is the sentence, but for the heroism of the Lord Commander, then implication being many more would have died or something like that. So Dunk did something heroic. Egg was desperately trying to hatch dragon eggs. Would a sacrifice be needed? Egg would certainly have heard if he got, and he did, apparently, he did the research, he got people over from Ashai, and they would have told him the same thing that Maester Marwyn knows, is that all Valyrian magic involve fire and blood. So he will have known that some sort of sacrifice probably would be needed. Would he sacrifice a member of his own family? I hope not. And I see no indication that that's where he went. Yes, he did seem to become very focused in his later years on this hatching a dragon egg. But the egg we see in Duncan Egg is still a small boy, but he doesn't seem to have a kind of a cruel heart or a nasty heart in his body. And from what we know of what he did as king, he was trying to care for the small folk. So again, he seems to have grown into a good adult. So there's nothing here that implies that he would have been trying to do that. What might have happened? Why might George R. Martin be trying to hide it? Perhaps he just wants us to have that moment when we read the story, not have it spoiled by his own in-world history book. And there will be something. There's so much with Dunk. We've talked about this on these streams several times, but Dunk thinks about his foot so much. And say why maybe there comes a time when the realm needs this foot. It's that's setting up something. Does he put his foot in a door? Does he use his foot to do something? What is that? There's something which is going to provide some kind of dramatic resolution to that. And so it makes sense to me that George R. Martin didn't want us to know the details. Maybe the outline is what we know it is. Egg tried to hatch some dragon eggs, big fire, got out of hand, lots of people died. It was a tragedy. But he doesn't want us to know the details of how exactly Dunk and Egg both died. Because even if there was a massive fire, wouldn't they have been able to just escape? Some managed to escape. How did they not? What were they doing? Where were they? Maybe he wants us to have that kind of dramatic revelation in the story itself, not just by hearing it by hearsay from somebody else. Let's go to Adam Yeats saying, "Hi, Robert and Dan. I know you believe Cold Hands is one of the Raven's teeth. When I reread reread those chapters recently, I fixated on the elk that he is riding. To ride an elk of that size, wouldn't he have to be a warg? If so, doesn't that negate the idea of Raven's Teeth member?" Okay, so the Raven's Teeth were basically Bloodraven's loyal bodyguards, 50 of whom joined the Night's Watch with him. So he didn't just go to be sent to the wall on his own and have to sort of make his own way. He basically went there with his own personal honor guard, who all became members of the Night's Watch at the same time. So I did a video, I think that's one with History of Westeros, and we concluded that he's probably a member of one of the Raven's Teeth. He's definitely loyal to Bloodraven. He definitely was a member of the Night's Watch, and he has definitely been there for quite some time. So all of those things kind of add up. George R. R. Martin is deliberately, I think, not telling us a name. I think this is the feel that we get from this, very much like he's an unknown soldier. It doesn't matter exactly who he is. What matters is the role that he's playing. He does ride an elk. Now, my knowledge of elks and the ability to ride elks is, I have to admit, limited. But the way it's described, this is a very big elk. And does this mean, in order for Cold Hands to be riding that elk, does Cold Hands need to be walking into the elk? And I think the answer is no, not necessarily. Bloodraven can walk into a number of different things at the same time. So it could be an elk that has been walked into by Bloodraven. Or it could just be a very well-trained elk. As I say, my knowledge of elks is limited. But I don't think that the only possible answer here is that Cold Hands is a skin changer. Let's go to Catherine Furseth, saying, "Hi, Robert. Talk about weirwoods around Harrenhal made me think about High Heart. What do we know about the place? Are there more places like it? And the ghost of High Heart herself, what's the purpose of her in the main story? We know her story, probably, with Jenny of Oldstone, Summerhall, etc. And yes, she shows in the current story that she can predict things happening and things to come. But where does she fit in the bigger picture, with the whole of the old gods' Greenseer scheme of things? Is she one of a kind? Are there more like her? Is she a child of the forest, a prophet of the old gods, or something completely different?" So, first of all, High Heart as a place, this is in the Riverlands. It's a hill, the top of which was sort of this crown or circle of weirwood trees. They were all chopped down. Are there more places like that? Yes, lots of them. Hollow Hills is a thing that the children of the forest often used, lived in, and there would be a weirwood or several weirwoods on the top of the hill. So High Heart may well have been one of the more central and more notable of those places, but there were other places that are similar. As for her story is she arrives on the scene in the year 239, I'm going to say, as a friend, the best friend of Jenny of Oldstones. Now, Sir Duncan the Small, this is the eldest son and heir to Aegon V, Egg. He meets and falls in love with Jenny of Oldstones, and he marries her. Huge crisis. There's a he has to abdicate his place in the line of succession. Because of this, Jenny of Oldstones comes down to King's Landing and brings her friend with her, who at the time was called the Woods Witch. We now know her as the Ghost of High Heart. The only thing we're told about, we're told two things. The first is that when she comes down, in terms of what she does, when she comes down, she gives the prophecy that of the line of the prince that was promised, and that has to be from the Eris Andreella. So that has to be. So she's the person who says. So basically, you now need to keep this bloodline pure here. And Jaehaerys II, who was Eris's father, he believed this absolutely and made this happen. So that's the first thing. And then the second thing is when Sir Barristan's asked, well, what happened to her? He just says, Summerhall. And she sort of says to Arya much later that she uses more sort of poetic language than this, but she just kind of like drowned in sorrow there. There's so many bad. Basically, Jenny, the clear implication is Jenny died, lots of other people that she cared about died, and she just hung around Harrenhal for a very long time afterwards. Now, what do we know about her? As a physical description, she's short, very short, 3 feet high, so like half the height of an average human. White skin, red eyes. Gnarled is a word that's used. Now, all of this imagery is very clear. It's Bloodraven imagery. White skin, red eyes, that's Bloodraven imagery. The gnarled word is a word which is only ever used, George R. R. Martin only ever uses it about old people and trees. So we've got this kind of tree imagery going on here as well. How does she therefore fit into this grand scheme of what's going on with the story? Well, Bloodraven by this point has disappeared off, and he's up at the wall and gone beyond. He still needs to be influencing matters down south. How does he do that? Well, he sends the Ghost of High Heart there. Her role is to get what was going to happen was that all of Egg's children, he had this plan. They were all going to be marrying influential other families out in Westeros. This was how he was going to secure the authority of the Targaryens long after dragons had gone. He would be getting these politically advantageous marriages for his children. That all fell through. And that fell through in large part because of the Ghost of High Heart. Best friends with Jenny of Oldstones, and Duncan, Prince Duncan, married Jenny rather than the daughter of Lionel Baratheon. Therefore, he took himself out, and they didn't have children, as far as we can tell, took himself out from the line of succession. Two of the other children married each other because they were told that they had to. So, or the grandchildren even. So that is because of the prophecy that she brought down with her. So what she did was she prevented the Targaryens from marrying lots of other people and having lots of children who were like half Targaryen, half something else. And in fact, the Targaryen, from that moment onwards, the Targaryen family tree just becomes the trunk. It doesn't branch off in other places. It's just Targaryens marrying Targaryens. So that is what her role was. I think, reading between the lines, she was sent there by Bloodraven to finish off this whole how do we prune down the family tree in order to get the prince that was promised that I think we need. Deb saying big love to the moderators. Yes, let's do a bit more love to the moderators. They do a fantastic job. So thank you so much. Can I also say thank you to patrons? I can't do what I do without your support. So thank you so much. That's why I do these live streams based around questions from my patrons. Talking of which, a reminder for Duncan Egg and Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, then after the episodes, I will ask patrons what questions they've got. And then I'll do a pre-record just going through those questions, just rattling through those questions. If you do want to support this channel, the best way to do this is through Patreon. There is a link down there in the description. Let's go to where do we get up to? Lady Vaughan-Strauss. Saying, hello, Robert. Hello to you. The children of the forest souls are said to inhabit the weirwoods, creating a vast interconnected network. But what happens when so many trees are destroyed that the surviving weirwoods become overcrowded with consciousnesses? Could the strain of so many ancient minds in too few trees explain some of the strange visions, whispered warnings, and mysterious interventions we see in Westeros? I think this is a really cool idea. The truth is we don't know. Exactly how this works. We don't know how the kind of the soul or spirit thing works. Bran, intriguingly, when he goes into one of the crows, ravens, whatever it is, one of the birds that's there near Bloodraven's cave, he discovers that a greenseer had been in there, and when a greenseer dies, their soul spirit will go to their bonded animal. And he finds a lot of these birds have got old greenseers living within them. So the implication is that the greenseer spirits don't go into the tree necessarily, or some of them don't go into the tree. Is it just their memories that sort of get uploaded into there? It's not 100% clear. This is something George R. R. Martin hasn't really talked to us about, or indeed whether or not they take up any physical space in a way. Can they kind of overlap or anything like that? One other thing I would say, though, is that we think of the weirwood trees as being the trees. Probably they're all connected underground. So it's not just like the weirwood network are just these one tree here, one tree over there, a couple there. The root system underground is massively bigger than what's going on above ground, which means that chopping down a few trees, yeah, that's not good. But the weirwood network survives. And we see this in a few different places where you get weirwood trees just kind of popping up and growing in places that perhaps they weren't expected to grow. So like the Whispers, in the Nightfort, places like that, we get these new, younger weirwoods just sort of like sprouting up. Let's go to Ms. Fox in Arda. Saying happy 2026 and to you too. I was re-listening to your Dragonbinder live stream and had a thought. You discussed the theory that the Dragon Rider and Dragonbinder might have been needed in Old Valyria to create the initial relationship between human and dragon, separate of what Targaryens might have done with bonding. What if the song Daemon sings to Vermithor is about that binding instead of bonding, where the interlocutor or priest figure is actually the horn? I'd love to hear your thoughts on that hypothetical link. Okay, so just to remind you, this comes from when we're talking about the song. This comes from season 1 of House of the Dragon. Towards the end, maybe the penultimate episode, when it becomes apparent that they're going to need more dragons, Daemon goes to visit Vermithor, who is a massive old dragon, and he sings him a song. He sings him a song in High Valyrian, and we got the words. And I should say the reason why we take this a bit seriously um, is not just that this is quite cool, but the translation into High Valyrian was by David Peterson, who it's his language basically. George R. R. Martin has been very open and honest about that. He's not a linguist himself. Um, he's invented some words for in High Valyrian. In fact, I think he's only invents it's a very small number, something like 6 or 7 words. David Peterson's done the rest. Anyway, he did the translation, but the words of this song come from T. McKell, who now I think has been working on Knight of the Seven Kingdoms, but was for a very long time his assistant, George R. R. Martin's assistant. So she understood um, all of the lore going on around here, and this is what that song says. Fire breather, winged leader, but 2 heads to a 3rd sing. From my voice, the fires have spoken, and the price has been paid with blood magic. With words of flame, with clear eyes, to bind the 3, to you I sing. So this is about binding 3. And you're talking about binding and bonding. These are different things. There's I think the difference you're trying to draw out is between a bond that is there between a rider and a dragon, and what must have happened at some point deep in past in Old Valyria to kind of bind the dragons as a whole to humanity, or not to humanity, but to dragon riding families. Might that have been done through a command, more like the kinds of things that we get with Dragonbinder seems to be about commanding dragons to do things? Could Dragonbinder be the kind of the priest figure? Because in this song there seem to be 3 roles. There's the dragon, there's the rider, and then there's this other person who's the priest interlocutor, somebody who's just like saying, I'm calling these now, I'm recalling this to your mind that the price was paid in the past, and things like that. Could that actually be the dragon? I think in the context of the song, no, because the priest kind of person seems to have a role in pointing things out and drawing people together, not just controlling. Which isn't to say that they might not have used a horn like Dragonbinder, but I don't think it was exactly just that. Martin S. Happy New Year to you, Martin. With a Tolkien question. How much easier would it be to win a sailing competition if you had Manwë on your team to optimize your wind in terms of speed and direction? Perhaps that would be cheating. Well, a lot easier. So Manwë, Lord of the Valar, who, yes, he was in charge of the winds, but yeah, if the Lord of the Valar is on your side, obviously this would make things a lot easier. But I think Ulmo in the waters, the currents be moving you in the right directions. I think that would be the Valar that I would want on my side in the sailing competition. Let's go to Relaxed Like a Cat, saying, Hi, Robert. I hope you had a great Christmas. I see what you did there. GRR Christmas. You often note how the deleted Tyrion chapter was George R. R. Martin avoiding taking his character down the wrong path. Do you think Dany's current political drama is a similar misstep, which could be why Winds of Winter is taking such a long time? So the Tyrion chapter we're talking about here is a chapter in the Sorrows. We get a chapter in the Sorrows, but George R. R. Martin was going to write a bigger chapter, another chapter, in which Tyrion meets the Shrouded Lord, this magical figure, and I think the word he uses is spooky. Oh, Dan's poking his head around the corner. Are you going to come in, buddy? No? Okay. Um, uh, but he decided not to go down that route because that wasn't where he wanted to go with that character and with that arc at that time. So um, the Banny chapters, when you're saying her political issues, I'm assuming you're meaning the Marine ones, not where she is right now. Where she is right now is in the Dothraki Sea. She's about to be taken to Vace Dothrak. Um, is that a route that he went down that he's probably now regretting? I mean, I don't think he is. He's been very open with the idea, with the fact that the Marine plot was hard for him. That was the thing which took him extra time in writing A Dance with Dragons. In particular, the order in which people arrived. When do these characters, lots of different characters, going to see her there? What order they arrive in? Because if they arrive in a slightly different order, then things will happen in different ways. Um, I don't think, though, that's he sees those as chapters as bad or complicated in any way. Yes, it was hard to get the iteration right. However, one of the things that he has said back when he was sort of replying to fandom questions and things like that was to be talking about, if you can Google this, perhaps somebody in the chat can provide a link to the Miranese blot, which is a blog. It was a blogger. I think they've stopped doing stuff now, but they wrote a series of essays working their way through Danny's chapters in Marine and what George R. R. Martin was trying to do with them. And he answered, basically said, yes, this guy gets it absolutely 100%. And that implies that he does not see this as the issue, the complications going on there. Um, he doesn't see this as taking her down the wrong path. He used those chapters very high level deliberately to take her down a path that he wanted to take her down, where there was read the essays, not just my version, but he says there's basically two parts to Danny's character. One is this caring, nurturing part, frees slaves, wants to rule a city wisely, and another is the Targaryen-y fire and blood. You're just going to conquer places and burn things. And this was her with these two parts to her character. She's trying to be that first person, to be the good and wise ruler, and she's making concession after concession after concession. She's wearing local dress. She's having to marry somebody that she doesn't want to marry. She's having to tie up her dragons and chain them into so they don't get out. She's doing this. She's reopening the pits, the fighting pits. All of these things, one after another. She's just making these concessions until finally she escapes out and leaves all of that behind. And then she's in Targaryen mode. The dragons remember who you are. Do you? Um, and that is the arc, and she's going to a darker place in the next book. So I don't think he sees that as a misstep. I think he sees that as an important part in where she is. I did a video, if you're interested, on why I think Winds of Winter has taken so long. It is like that, but I think it's just that on every level, he's made this story so big and complicated. Kim Wade, thank you very much. Didn't see a question along with you there. If there is one, I'm sure somebody will sort of pick that up. I'm just having a quick flick through to see whether I can see it, but I can't see a question attached to that. Okay, let's go to got a little bit of love for Dan the dog. He did show he's now lying down outside the door here. I think he wants to go out, but he also doesn't want to go out. It's quite cold out here. There's snow has come to England overnight, so he's not quite sure if he wants to go into the garden or not. Anyway, where did we get to? Lady Vaughan-Strauss saying, "Hello, Robert. I hope you had a fantastic holiday." I did, thank you. Heroes from the Silver Age of comics, 1956 to 1970, often faced threats so big that no one hero could handle them alone. Could Martin's narrative be structured in a similar way, with 4 key figures whose distinct abilities and choices interact to confront forces larger than themselves? History, prophecy, magic, mirroring the fourfold dynamic that was the gold standard of the Silver Age. Well, I will bow to your superior knowledge of the Silver Age of comics. George R. Martin is a fan of comics and graphic novels and all things of that ilk. And that's his era, so he will definitely be aware of it. Now, is he going to use that? I think one thing which is very clear to me is that this idea that there is one Azor Ahai figure, we've got lots of Azor Ahai / Prince that was promised figures within this story. And I don't think we're going to end up in a situation where we have them all sort of looking at each other and saying, we just need to work together. And then we can use your ability to do that, your special skills here and that there, and we'll all be this team and go and take on the bad guy. That doesn't seem to be where he's going with this. That said, this will still require all of their different talents and abilities, lots of different people to achieve the ends that we're trying to get to. Now, how might that work? Well, we look back at the legends of the First Long Night, and you find the last hero didn't just embark on his own. He had a whole series of companions and a dog. And then he got the help of the Children of the Forest. And then we read about the Wolf of the Dawn, and that had the Night's Watch. Lots of them all taking part. So we've got this principle that it's not just a hero. Yes, this Azor Ahai type is who people will rally behind, but they won't do these things on their own. So I think what I would say is that I don't think we're going to have like the classic sort of, if this is the imagery from the Silver Age, then I don't think we're going to get the classic, these 4 disparate heroes come together to form a new supergroup, and then they're going to go off and do stuff together. But we are looking at an array of people who will all be doing things. Bran is going to have an important role to play. John is going to have an important role to play. Danny is going to have an important role to play, and lots of other people as well. So it's going to be lots of different people, but not necessarily all working together. Deb asking if George R. R. Martin could release half of the Winds of Winter. It's certainly big enough for 2 books. I think he's going to write the whole thing, and then once it's all written, then he will release it, but it will be big enough. It will have to be released in volumes, probably 2, maybe 3. I don't think he will want to go down the route of what he did with Feast of Crows and A Dance with Dragons, where he kind of like splits it up geographically, basically. I don't think he's going to do that. He's also waiting for an update, but he's 75-80% of the way through, so he's done most of it. And I think he will just want to get it all done and out there, not just half. His writing style means that when we say he's done 75-80% of it, he has, but that's still open for him to come back and change stuff. If something in this last 20% that he's doing makes him go, what I really needed was for that character to do this in an earlier chapter, he will then go back and rewrite an earlier chapter. So it's not all finished until it's all finished. Gilio saying, "Do you have an all-time favorite Song of Ice and Fire chapter?" No, I don't have one standout chapter that I go back and say this is my favorite. There's a few I often name check as ones that I think are really good. Um, I I often name check the Arya one when she's just before she's about to when she's there with Roose Bolton in Harrenhal. I think that's incredibly well written. Um, I really enjoyed this. My last read through, I really enjoyed the Cersei chapters. There's one when she sort of starts by not understanding why Robert Baratheon could have treated her like he did, and by the end of it, she is acting exactly like him. And I think that's an incredibly um, well written chapter. I love the double header of two different chapters that deal with the whole situation with Joffrey getting bitten near the crossroads. Um, I think that works so well as this kind of microcosm of all of the characters and showing us how the characters are going to interrelate when they get down to King's Landing. I think that's a fantastic chapter. So there's lots of chapters that I would sort of hold up as favourites, but not one that I would say yes, that above all else. Hakeem Wade saying, "I believe there's different children with different magic, fire, ice, and water. I also believe there's children on human side and one on the other side. What's your thoughts?" So Children of the Forest is this. Some of them are on the human side and some on the other side. I mean, potentially. Um, I don't think there are enough of them left for there to be too many factions. I think that's probably what I would say. Um, the the working theory, which is where they went with this in the TV show, um, and it seems to work in the books as well, is that the others come from they were created by the children of the forest to act against humanity now, and then they just the weapon became too powerful. So that is the starting point. There might You would imagine there would at some point there would be a um, the children's views on what they should do about the others would vary. George R. Martin is too good a writer to leave, as we have at the moment, this kind of vague idea the children of the forest are just this mass of people who all think and feel the same thing. That definitely isn't going to be the case. We will find that there are different views and thoughts going on within the children of the forest. Um, that's Ballerina saying, "Woe to the usurper if we had been." Since this wording comes from Ned's non-magical fever dream, does this mean he subconsciously sees Robert as an illegitimate king? Those words came from Ned's brain. Okay, so this is the fever dream that Ned has, and he's remembering back to the Tower of Joy, and he has this quite long conversation with the Kingsguard who were there, and he sort of says, "We weren't at the Battle of the Trident," and they go, "No, we weren't. Woe to the usurper if we had been." And he says, "You weren't at King's Landing," and they say, "No, we weren't there either." He says, "You weren't at Storm's End," and so he has this kind of long conversation. Um, does the fact that in this fever dream uh, they say "Woe to the usurper"? Does that mean that Ned subconsciously thinks that Robert Baratheon is a usurper? I mean, it's possible. Um, the fact is that the rebellion started as a reaction to what um, Aerys II was doing. He demanded, after having killed Ned's brother and father, he demanded that Ned and Robert Baratheon come down to King's Landing, and they basically said, well, we know what's going to happen if we do that, so that's a no. And they basically had a choice: do we go along with that, or do we declare war? It's an important and often overlooked point that they didn't seem to have started with this idea of, and then Robert Baratheon will become king. He seems not so. Ned goes off. He goes up to the north. He gathers the army to get his army together. He marches down south. He fights in the Battle of the Bells. He does the marriage thing, and they're then heading on towards the Battle of the Trident. And we're told it's then that Robert Baratheon starts saying, "And I will become king." So all of that time, Ned, for most of the war, Ned was not thinking Robert Baratheon here is going to become with this. We're doing this in order for Robert Baratheon to be king. He's not. That's not really where his mind is at. Um, so, um, might he think he's a usurper? At some level, maybe. It's not entirely clear that they had a a clear understanding of what they were going to do after the war. When they started the war, it was just, we have to get rid of this guy. But having said all of that, it's an interesting question. But having said all of that, I don't think just because this is his fever dream, it doesn't mean that the characters in it are all saying things that Ned is thinking and feeling. The George R. Martin tells us not to take it literally, but most of it is this long conversation. And I think we can take the feel of it and the theme of what's going on here, which is he in his mind knows there's a reason why these Kingsguard are here, and there's only one good reason why they're here. They're not just like out standing there randomly guarding Lyanna Stark for no reason whatsoever. He knows that there's a reason why they're there, and that's the thing. He probably remembers bits of this conversation, even if he doesn't know the exact words. And the point was that they weren't anywhere else. They were here all this time because this is where Baby John is. Now, so I don't. Yes, it could be a little bit of there in Ned's mind. We certainly don't see anywhere else from him, though, thinking, yeah, my mate Robert is illegitimate as a king. He shouldn't be king. He was a usurper. We never, when his thoughts for chapters and chapters and chapters, we never get that. So instinctively, I'd say probably no. Probably this is just him remembering the feel of the conversation. I think it would be an even weirder, let's put it this way, an even weirder fever dream if in this fever dream he'd gone up there to the Kingsguard and they'd said, and he says, I didn't see you at the Trident, and they say, no, the glorious King Robert Baratheon would have defeated us. Or that would not have been, that would not have made any sense. Buttoned up reader saying Robert's not Henry VII level low down in the succession where the nobility was like who? No, exactly. And yeah, this is another point I think which is often overlooked, which is yes, he was he took the throne by force, but it's not that he was a nobody. He was the lord of House Baratheon, which is an incredibly powerful family. And not just that, but you could probably look at it, given the fact that his grandmother was a Targaryen, and say, well, if you are going to kill Eris, if you are going to kill Rhaegar, which he definitely wanted to, and if Rhaegar's two children that we know of are both dead, that leaves just at that time two Targaryens left. He probably was next in line after that. On even like the most, pro-Targaryen attempt to have the line of succession, he probably was third, fourth in line, depending on how you interpret it, by everybody's understanding of it. Let's go to Anna E. Saying, I watched the Lord of the Rings trilogy, and it reminded me, I've got a few Lord of the Rings questions here. Do keep the questions coming in the chat, by the way. It reminded me, this is over Christmas, it reminded me of a question I have from the books. In Moria, when they're reading the book by the Tomb of Balin, why is it written in Elvish? Do they have a reason to believe that elves, rather than dwarves, would be reading it? Yeah, so you'll remember the scene from the films. They're in Moria, and they found the tomb of Balin, and Gandalf's there, and he's got the big book, and he sort of looked at it, and it drums in the deep. When you're reading the book rather than watching the film, then it describes it as this. It says that it was written by many different hands in runes, both of Moria and of Dale, and here and there in Elvish script. And then a bit later, he says, here is something, a large, bold hand using an Elvish script. That would be Ori's hand, said Gimli, looking over the wizard's arm. He could write well and speedily, and often used the Elvish characters. So, why Elvish? Well, first, just sort of to clarify what this is. This is a log, a record of the mission, Balin's mission to retake Moria, Khazad-dûm. And it's sort of like a captain's log is probably the best way of understanding this. Like the Starship Enterprise kind of idea is that they would just sort of write stuff down as they're going through, not just by Balin, but others would put stuff in there that they felt should be recorded for posterity in some way. And it was written mostly in runes, but some with Elvish script. Why Elvish? Well, we have to remember Tolkien's a philologist, so almost any other writer, this distinction you wouldn't even think of, but for Tolkien this was really important. He says Elvish script, and there's a difference between Elvish script and Elvish language. So the Elvish script is the letters and how you do it. Rather than runes, it's written in sort of Elvish script, but the language was not necessarily Elvish. It was very probably Westron Common Tongue, which used the Elvish script for that. So I hope that distinction is understandable. There's a difference between the language and the script. Now, why did Ori choose to write in that? Well, I think a couple of reasons, maybe even three. Firstly, what Gimli says, he liked it. He seemed to like writing, and he liked, and nowadays we don't think of writing as being like a pleasurable activity. Tolkien did think of it. You can see videos of him actually writing out in the different languages and scripts that he has. He clearly enjoyed the kind of the art of calligraphy, and he has Ori here who enjoys doing that, and so that's the first thing. He chose it because that's a thing that he enjoys doing. Secondly, Gimli says that he can do it quickly, and this wasn't something that if you're doing runes, that takes a lot longer than just you're writing a word. So this was a thing that he was going to do quickly There might have been a greater certainty towards the end, a greater sense of urgency when it's like drums in the deep. At this point, the earlier pages, they could have more runes and things like that. They could take their time. We discovered a new tunnel here. We did whatever. That was fine. They didn't need to rush this. There was a need to do it relatively quickly. And then thirdly, the thought probably was this is something that we're not trying to hide this. We're not going to do this in dwarvish runes that nobody really understands. If anyone comes here, they probably will be able to read this and understand this is a thing we want anyone. It's not just elves, humans, whoever who are passing through will be able to read this. Right, let's go to Rabbi Mitra. Saying salutations and happy new year. Thank you, and to you. The recent Melis video, Melis the Monstrous, was the first time I feel that your produced videos were referencing content from the drafts for A Feast for Crows. I know you're a bit cautious about using the information, but do you planning on referencing other info from drafts in your videos this year? Glass candles, Melisandre's quotes, etc. Yeah, so I did do that. That was another collaboration with Aziz. So that was actually from him, not from me. I tend to be quite uncertain. I have sort of in previous videos I have sometimes mentioned drafts. For example, the where Blackfire is, there's a really interesting draft that we've got an earlier version that he read out of a chapter with Illyrio talking about a sword that he read out at a con or something like that. That got changed in the final version. So I have sometimes done that. I am a little bit not uncertain, but I tend to hold back a little bit on that because we do not know why certain drafts George R. Martin went against. He might have decided, actually, I'm going to go in a completely different direction. I don't like that idea. That's not going to happen. He might have decided, now is not the time to give that information. I'm going to do that in a later book. He might have decided, actually, I can't. This is too much information. I'm not going to put it in there. There are 101 different reasons why he might have decided not to include an earlier draft or what's in an earlier draft in the final version. So I think the best we can often do with this, and this particular on the Melis video, the early draft is this idea that he did have a child who he sacrificed, presumably in an attempt to hatch dragon eggs. Now, that wasn't included in the final drafts, but it sort of says something about his character and also potentially this kind of idea that part, the Blackfire line, is very similar to Targaryens who've done similar things. So, yes, I when I think something is relevant, I will name check it. But a lot of the time, I think we just need to be wary about including things that have been specifically excluded from the books because they're excluded because George R. R. Martin didn't want that to be in there. Okay. Let's go to another question from Ranabir saying, I noticed that we have 1 major ring, 3 elven rings, 7 dwarven rings, and 9 rings for men. 1, 3, 7, 9. Do you think there ever was an idea for 5 rings of power, thus completing the 1, 3, 5, 7, 9 sequence? My theory, says Ranabir, is that when Tolkien was working around the nature of Ents, eagles, and special animals like Miras and Huan, them being lesser beings would potentially allow for the thought of Sauron wanting to control them using ring magic. Since this idea around their nature did not advance, this resulted in the 5 rings of power being abandoned. What do you think, or am I simply overthinking this? Maybe a little bit of overthinking. The first, I think there's 2 things I would say here. The first is that we have to remember that the 1379, this is a distribution of rings thing, not a creation of rings thing. To start with, there was always going to be the one master ring, but there was 16. He made, with Celebrimbor, he made 16 of these rings of power. And the idea was that these were going to be distributed to the elves. He was going to be able to control the elves through the master ring. They had all of these 16 rings, but it didn't work. He forged his one ring, and they all go, "Whoa!" They take their rings off. I'm not getting involved in that. So he then invaded Eregion. Sauron did, and he claimed those 16 rings back. So at the moment, we've got a 1 ring and we've got 16. During the gap that he was gone, Celebrimbor made the 3. So we've got a 1, a 3, and 16. He then, having got these 16, he didn't want to completely give up on his plan because it was such a good plan. He put so much time and energy into it. So he distributes the rings. It didn't work with elves. Let's try dwarves. Let's try humans. He's got 16 of these. There are 7 dwarf tribes. It makes sense to give 7 to the dwarves. That leaves 9. He gave all the other 9 to humans. So it was like the reason why we get these different numbers there is not an immediate. I think I'm going to create 9 rings for humans. I think I'm going to create 7 rings for dwarves. They were not intended originally for those people. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, leaving all of that to one side, we have got 1, 3, 7, and 9. There is a gap for 5. Was the intention that perhaps there was going to be a 5 at some point? Maybe. We've not got anything from Tolkien that says, I thought about having 5, but then I decided not to do it. We get various hints and things. Now, I get this idea of maybe having rings of power for other beings. I tend, on purely practical grounds, a ring of power fits on somebody's finger. The if you're talking about distributing them to ents or dogs or horses, the fingers are more complicated when it comes to them. So the ring wouldn't be the way to do it. So I don't personally go down that route. If he was going to do 5, I do notice there is a group of 5 people of another species that he could have done, being the Astari. They're all Maya. So perhaps the thought had been there at some stage that, yes, the 1 master ring, 3 for elves, 5 for Maya, 7 for dwarves, and 9 for humans. That would work for me, but we don't have any evidence of it, and instinctively, I suspect not. And Ninja Robo, last question I've got from my patrons. Do drop any more questions into the chat. I will pick them up. Ninja Robo saying, I was thinking about this. Yeah, I remember this question. I was thinking about this on my way to work in the morning. Do you think Bilbo was justified in cheating at riddles with Gollum? Not only was his final question not a riddle, he also refused to give the answer at the end. I think Gollum is morally justified in eating him. Do you? So, no. Is the short answer. I did. I think somebody over on Patreon did sort of say, "Well, that would be a good video." Maybe I will do a video. It'll be quite a fun one. I don't think Tolkien would want us to go away from that encounter with this idea that Gollum would have been morally justified in eating Bilbo. I don't think that's where Tolkien would have come from on this. But was Bilbo cheating? I think the answer has to be yes. And we like Bilbo, but realistically, it wasn't a riddle, and he didn't give the answer. And yeah, it should leave you a little bit uncomfortable, I think. Now, he was only in that situation because he was at risk of being eaten and he was trying to find his way out. So actually, I personally think you can say he was justified in doing this. For me, I think the bigger thing, though, is back in Tolkien's day, we probably didn't talk about it quite those terms, but nowadays, I think we probably would use the word foreshadowing here. What Tolkien is doing, I think, really quite well is up to this point in the story, Bilbo, broadly speaking, he's been this quiet, nice, good person from the Shire, taken out of his depth and just going on along on this adventure. But here, what do we find? That he lies, that he cheats, that he covers his tracks. Specifically, he double crosses the Gollum, who he had come to an agreement with. He lies to cover up. He takes a treasure out that he doesn't tell anyone out about, and then lies to cover it up, which actually is what happens later with the Arkenstone. He takes a treasure out, he lies, he doesn't tell anyone about it, and he double crosses somebody that he's got an agreement with. That is what happens later with the Arkenstone. So we're seeing this already, an element of the character of Bilbo that we didn't previously know about, that is going to play out later on in the story. Okay, let's have a very quick flick through the chat. Sleshy Lesh saying, why do I have the idea Tyrion shared the room with a twin brother? I probably got it from LML, but I forget the explanation. Your Maylis video made me think he is a reference to this twin. Well, I certainly haven't ever, to the best of my knowledge, suggested that. I mean, it's possible. For those who don't know, Maylis, watch the video, but Maylis had a twin in the womb that they were conjoined, they sort of survived, and he's got a little head. This is why he's Maylis the Monstrous, a little head sort of poking out from the side of his neck. Let's have a Nick Noyes saying, hi, Robert, curious of your favourite recent fantasy series. I know you've mentioned the First Law before. Have you dipped into Malazan, Farseer, or Broken Earth? Yes, Broken Earth, absolutely. Excellent. I think I heard a year or so ago that they were making that into a film series, maybe. So N.K. Jemisin, for those who don't know, really very well written, and I think all three parts won a Hugo. I might be wrong on that one. Farseer, Malazan, I haven't ever really got into. I'm afraid. The Farseer stories, Robin Hobb, absolutely love. I've talked about them several times on here. I think they're excellent, really, really good. Yeah, buttoned up reader saying Bilbo signed up for a job with the title burglar. We have to remember. Yeah, absolutely. We probably shouldn't have been too surprised. Okay, and I think that's. Did I have a? Okay, we've got a question here from Kais Ballerina saying, Maedhros and Maglor were tormented by the Silmarils and threw themselves into a fiery cleft in the earth and the sea. Were they on a volcano in the ocean, or did they decide to travel to different places to die? Why? Yes, they did. So they went to different places. So Maglor had threw it into the ocean. And the other was down into sort of a crack in the earth. So they got and the way. So what Tolkien did was he had the three Silmarils ending up one in the earth, one in the sea, one in the sky. That was how that whole story ended up. But yes, they were. I mean, the Silmarils is this is where the Silmarillion, the name the Silmarillion comes from. It's a tragedy. Is the way that this is that um, finally the Sons of Feanor do end up with a couple of these Silmarils, and they have to get rid of them. After all they've done, the horrors that they've committed, the Sons of Feanor over time, in order to get these Silmarils, it's all for nothing, and they just have to throw them out. So yeah, that's where you end up with this story. Um, let's go to a question from Martin S. Who does Sansa loathe more, Joffrey or Ramsay? Um, well, so uh, in the book, so on the TV show, I mean, your guess is as good as mine, but I think probably Ramsay did more actual horrors direct to her. Um, in the books, she's not really come across Ramsay at all. She's and this is one of the things that it still jars when you watch the TV show. You think, well, why on earth would Littlefinger hand her over to Ramsay if he knew what Ramsay was like? That's completely out of character for him to do that with Sansa. In the books, then um, she is still in the Vale and nowhere near Ramsay, and she's going to be potentially marrying Harry Harding, Harry the Heir. Right. So let's. I think with that we'll start trying to draw this one to a close. What things to remember? So the videos coming out again now, starting up on the main channel. Um, uh, a Night of the Seven Kingdoms. I will be doing stuff on this channel, answering questions from patrons on pre-recorded live streams on this channel, and what else? Yeah, the videos on the main channel are now going all over the place. I'm pushing them there now at Facebook as well. I've started uploading them, the back catalogue, up onto Facebook, Spotify, Apple, various podcast places. Basically, I'm pushing it out all over the place. So if you find it easier to watch the main videos from the main channel over on Facebook or Spotify or whatever, feel free to go and do that. But I think that's probably it for this time. I will have a think. I've not had a think about this yet, about what we do with these live streams and what topics we're going to cover. Leave if you're here to the end of this video, take a moment, go down and drop a comment in what you'd like over this year. What I think it works well when we have specific topic. I do like doing these open Q&As. It gives us a chance to people ask questions about anything, but I do quite like it when we can go through a series doing deeper dives into issues. So let me know down in the comments what you'd like to see. But if you are watching this back a little bit later on IDG Lives, appearing somewhere around here, it's going to be a link to more live streams appearing somewhere around here. It's going to be a link to my Patreon page, which is the best way to support this channel if you wish to do so. And thank you if you do. But that is all for this time. Take care, everyone, and I will see you again same time next week.